Tell her she's invited to my wedding. She can come see what real success looks like." The words slid through the phone speaker like a blade. My mother froze, the floral napkin she was folding slipping from her fingers. I was standing in the doorway of our small Dallas kitchen, and I knew that voice instantly. Marcus Donovan, my ex-husband. Mama's eyes darted toward me, her lips pressed tight, but I'd already heard enough. My stomach tightened, and for a moment, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the old wall clock, even the sound of the traffic outside, all of it faded into a dull, heavy silence. I hadn't heard his name spoken in years, and suddenly, here it was, dropped into my quiet Sunday like a thunderclap. Mama's voice was sharper than usual when she replied. "Marcus, what do you think you're doing calling here?" He chuckled, smooth as ever. "Just passing along an invitation. Elena's welcome to join us next month. Vanessa and I would be happy to see her." My throat went dry. Happy to see me at his wedding, to the woman he left me for. It wasn't an invitation, it was a performance, a chance for him to parade his life in front of me to prove that he had won. Mama didn't bother with niceties. "You can keep your so-called invitation." She slammed the phone down and turned to me. Her jaw was set, but her eyes were soft. "Baby, don't you let that man pull you back into his mess." I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught in my chest. All I could do was grip the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. For 6 years, Marcus had been the center of my world. For 6 years, I had carried the blame for everything he said was wrong in our marriage. And now he wanted to drag me into his spotlight, not out of kindness, but out of cruelty. I could almost see it already. Marcus tall and polished in his custom tuxedo. Vanessa glowing in her designer gown, the guests sipping champagne while I walked in small and pitiful, the ex-wife who had been left behind. He wanted to write me as the tragic character in his fairy tale. But the truth was far messier than he would ever admit. My chest rose and fell with shaky breaths. I reached for a glass of water, but even the coolness against my lips couldn't steady me. My heart pounded so loudly, I swore Mama could hear it. She came closer, resting a steady hand on mine. "Elena," she whispered, "he doesn't know who you are anymore. He only remembers the woman he broke, not the woman you've become." Her words cut through the fog, but still old memories pressed in. I saw myself years ago standing in a kitchen, not unlike this one, Marcus's voice echoing in my head. "What's wrong with you? Why can't you give me children?" The shame, the tears, the endless appointments at clinics where doctors assured me there was nothing wrong. Yet Marcus never believed me. He had his proof after all, a son with another woman. I thought about the nights I cried alone in a hospital parking lot, the afternoons I skipped meals just to save money, the day I handed Marcus every cent I had, $15,000, my entire life's savings, because he promised it was for us, for our future. That money had built the very empire he was now flaunting. And still, it wasn't enough for him to simply move on. He wanted to see me small again. He wanted to make sure I never forgot how thoroughly he believed he had discarded me. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe. The ticking clock filled the silence until Mama finally spoke again. "Baby girl, you don't have to answer him. Not now. Not ever." I nodded, but inside something stirred. Anger, yes, but also something sharper, something stronger. Marcus thought he could script my role in his story. But maybe, just maybe, it was time I told my own. Because the woman he wanted to humiliate, the barren ex-wife with nothing to her name, she no longer existed. And if he thought inviting me to that wedding would break me, he had no idea just how wrong he was. That phone call was the spark. But to understand why it cut so deep, and why I couldn't just ignore it, you have to know how it all began. How I once believed Marcus Donovan was my forever. How I gave him everything, and how he nearly destroyed me before I found the strength to rebuild. And that story starts years earlier on the day I first said yes to him. I was 23 when I married Marcus Donovan. 23, and so full of hope it practically spilled out of me. Back then I thought love was simple, two people promising forever, building something beautiful together. I believed that a good woman could love a man into being better. And Marcus had that kind of presence that made you believe in fairy tales. He was 6'2", broad shoulders with a smile that could light up any room. Smooth talker, charming in that way that made your girlfriends jealous and your mama nervous. When he got down on one knee outside the little chapel in South Dallas where we first met, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. I remember the air that day, warm, heavy with the scent of magnolia cicadas buzzing like a choir in the background. He slid the ring on my finger, and for a moment everything felt perfect. But perfect doesn't last. The first red flag should have been his son Caleb. Not the boy himself. Caleb was innocent, just a wide-eyed toddler clinging to his daddy's leg. No, the red flag was the way Marcus spoke about Caleb's mother, Vanessa. Just a mistake, he'd say, waving off the fact that she still called him late at night. "You're my future now, baby," he whispered once, kissing my temple. "She's just the past." I told myself to swallow the discomfort, to trust him. Love meant accepting all of him, right, even the parts that made my chest tighten. The second red flag came when we couldn't get pregnant right away. Month after month, I'd take those tests waiting for 2 pink lines. Month after month, nothing. Marcus was quick to remind me whose fault he thought it was. "My boy's healthy," he'd say, pointing at Caleb's pictures on the mantel. "Already got proof I can make kids." "So what's wrong with you, Elena? What's wrong with you?" Those 4 words became the soundtrack of my marriage. What's wrong with you when dinner wasn't seasoned right? What's wrong with you when I asked him to come home earlier? What's wrong with you when I begged him to see a doctor with me? "I don't need no doctor," he'd snap. "I already got a son running around. Everything works just fine down there." So I went alone. Appointment after appointment, test after test. Cold exam rooms, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the sting of needles, the chill of metal tables. And the results. Perfectly normal. My body was fine, fertile, healthy. But when I brought home the paperwork, Marcus barely looked up from his phone. "That's good, baby," he muttered, his thumbs flying across the screen, probably texting Vanessa again. The physical pain of those years was hard, but the emotional pain cut deeper. Marcus never raised his fist, but his hands were quick to grip my wrist, a little too tight, his fingers digging into my shoulders when he wanted to make a point. To outsiders, it might have looked like affection. To me, it felt like warning signs. And his words, they were sharper than any bruise. "You're lucky I even married you. Most men wouldn't want a woman who can't give them children." I carried those words like stones in my chest. Still, I kept giving. 6 years, I gave him everything, my loyalty, my savings, my self-respect. The money part came when his hours got cut at the auto shop. Bills piled up, rent slipped behind. I had been saving carefully, clipping coupons, skipping lunches, working overtime at the department store. Over the years, I had scraped together $15,000, my nest egg, my safety net. When Marcus found out, his eyes gleamed like I'd just handed him the world. 15 grand. He repeated it like he couldn't believe it. "And you've been sitting on that while I'm out here stressing." "I was saving it for us," I said quickly, hearing the danger in his voice. "For our future. Maybe even treatments. If our future is right now," he cut in. "I got an opportunity, Elena. My boy Damon's opening a second dry cleaning location. He needs a partner. This could be it, baby. This could be our way out." Every instinct in me screamed no. But then for once, his hands were gentle on my face. His voice was soft. "Once this takes off, we can finally focus on having that family." It was the hope in those words that undid me. I emptied my account, handed him every penny. And the business did take off. Prestige Cleaners became a success almost overnight. Within 6 months, Marcus was making more money than he ever had. He wore designer suits, bought a new car, walked taller, laughed louder. But success didn't make him kinder. It made him crueler. He started treating me like an employee, not a wife. Staying out late smelling of cologne I hadn't bought, dressing like he was auditioning for a life I wasn't part of. Vanessa's texts became calls, the calls became visits, the visits turned into overnights. I stayed, because that's what love was supposed to mean. Wasn't it staying, believing, hoping? Until the night I came home early. Grocery bags in my arms, keys jangling in the lock, and I heard it Marcus's laugh. A woman's voice, Vanessa's. "She's so pathetic," Vanessa sneered. "Still playing house like y'all actually got a real marriage." Marcus's reply cut me open. "I can't keep doing this much longer. I'm making real money now. I don't need her anymore." They laughed together, laughed at my love, my sacrifice, my desperation. I froze on the porch, heart pounding so hard I thought the whole neighborhood could hear it. I sat in my car for hours, tears streaming until there was nothing left. 3 days later, Marcus handed me divorce papers like they were a takeout menu. "Sign these," he said flatly. "We don't have kids, we don't talk. I don't love you like that anymore." I stared at him, dish towel still in my hand. 6 years of marriage reduced to a shrug. "What about the money?" I whispered. He paused at the door, guilt flickering for just a second before it vanished. "That was a gift," he said. "You can't take back a gift." And just like that, it was over. Within a month, Vanessa moved into my house. Within 2, the divorce was final. Within 3, I was packing my Honda Civic with trash bags full of clothes, leaving behind everything I'd built. At 29, I had nothing. No husband, no money, no children. Just a broken heart and a one-way road back to my mother's house. That's where I thought my story ended. But life has a way of rewriting the chapters you think are finished. And as I stepped back into that old Dallas neighborhood, I had no idea the very place I once fled would become the soil where I rebuilt everything. When I pulled into Mama's driveway that gray October afternoon, it felt like stepping back in time. The house was smaller than I remembered, the paint peeling around the window frames, the porch swing creaking in the wind. Inside, Mama was sitting at the table, insulin kit beside her, a stack of bills fanned out like a losing hand of cards. "I'm sorry, Mama," I whispered, setting my bags down. "I should have been here." She reached for my hand, her skin thin but warm. "Don't you dare apologize for loving someone, Elena. That's not weakness. That's proof you've got a heart, and that heart's gonna carry you further than you think." But at that moment, I didn't believe her. I felt hollowed out like a shell of myself. It was around then that I first noticed him, Daniel Brooks. He was always around the neighborhood, tall and lean, a camera hanging from his neck. He'd been hired to document the revitalization efforts in South Dallas. One afternoon, he stopped by Mama's shuttered cafe. "I know it's closed," he said, gesturing toward the dust-streaked windows, "but there's something beautiful about the bones of this place. I'd love to film it." Mama, being Mama, invited him in for coffee. She told him stories of the cafe's golden days, how working folks would line up for her fried chicken, how neighbors gathered there after church. I mostly stayed in my room, too broken to meet his gaze. But Daniel didn't give up. One evening, he found me on the back porch, staring out at the dying light. "You don't have to talk," he said gently. "I'll just sit here if that's okay." And he did. No questions, no pressure, just presence. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. 3 months passed before I finally told him the truth. About Marcus. About the money. About the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering why I wasn't enough. I expected pity. Instead, Daniel's jaw tightened. "That man's a fool," he said quietly. "Someday he'll realize what he gave up. But you're still here." That means something. His words were like water to dry soil. Slowly, something inside me began to grow again. It started small, helping Mama organize her medications, repainting the cafe's front door, scrubbing the counters until they gleamed. Then came an idea. What if we didn't reopen it as a diner, I mused aloud one night. What if we turned it into something different, something this neighborhood needs now? Daniel tilted his head, intrigued. Like what? Healthy, affordable meals. Grab-and-go bowls. Smoothies. Fresh food that doesn't cost a fortune. I spent weeks at the library poring over books on nutrition and small business. By day, I've stocked shelves at a grocery store to pay bills. By night, I experimented in Mama's kitchen: quinoa bowls, roasted veggies, tahini dressings. Mama became my taste tester, nodding enthusiastically after every bite. This is it, baby, she'd say. This could change everything. But I was terrified. Failure felt like a shadow at my back. What if I poured myself into this and lost again? That's when Daniel stepped in. Let me help, he offered one evening, camera still slung across his chest. I can't pay you. I'm not asking for money. I believe in this. I believe in you. Looking back, maybe that was the moment I started falling for him. He filmed everything: my trips to the farmer's market at dawn, my late-night recipe tests, my meltdowns when a sauce didn't turn out right. He never made me feel like I had to perform. He just showed up, capturing the truth of my messy, fragile rebuild. 2 years. That's how long it took before I had enough saved to renovate Mama's cafe. 2 years of ramen dinners, double shifts, and saying no to every indulgence. 2 years of Daniel asking me out and me saying not yet. I'm not ready. And every time he'd smile and say, I'll be here when you are. True to his word, he was. We called it Harvest Kitchen. The logo was simple, a heart made of intertwining leaves, honoring Mama's belief that food should nourish body and soul. Opening day. I thought no one would come. By noon, we had a line out the door. People loved it. Busy parents, students, seniors, everyone wanted food that made them feel good without draining their wallets. But success wasn't overnight. For the first year, I barely broke even. 16-hour days, aching feet, tears over broken blenders at 3 a.m. Some nights I collapsed into bed, too tired to take off my shoes. And still Daniel filmed. You should post these videos, he kept telling me. No, I said firmly. I can't let Marcus or anyone see me struggle. He never argued, just kept filming, patient as ever. By the end of the second year, Harvest Kitchen was thriving. We had regulars, part-time staff, and whispers of expanding. More importantly, I was thriving. I wasn't that broken woman anymore. That's when I finally said yes to Daniel. Our first date wasn't extravagant, just pasta at a small Italian place downtown, but it felt like coming home. 6 months later, he proposed. Not with fireworks or flash mobs, but in our kitchen on a quiet Sunday morning, knife in one hand, onions in the other. Marry me, he said simply. I laughed through my tears. Okay. We married in a courthouse, sunflowers in my hands, Mama smiling through it all. Nothing like my first wedding, and thank God for that. 3 months after 2 miracles collided. First, Daniel convinced me to let him post a short video about Harvest Kitchen. Just me speaking about why I believed food should nourish, not just fill. He filmed it so my face wasn't clear, respecting my privacy. That video went viral, thousands of views, then millions. Orders started flooding in, bloggers called, news anchors wanted interviews. The second miracle, a positive pregnancy test. After years of being told I couldn't, after being blamed and belittled, my body proved otherwise. Not 1 child, not 2, but 3. Triplets. I remember Daniel's tears at the ultrasound, his hands shaking as he whispered, "We're having 3. It wasn't easy. Those 9 months were the hardest of my life, but when I held Lila, Luna, and Leora in my arms, I knew I had stepped into the life I was meant to live. For 2 years, we lived quietly, abundantly. Harvest Kitchen expanded nationwide, our daughters filled the house with laughter, and Mama finally got to rest in comfort. Marcus faded into the background of my mind, like a character from a story I'd once read and put back on the shelf. At least until that phone call years later, because the man who had broken me once wasn't finished. He was about to invite me back into his world, not to celebrate, but to humiliate, and he had no idea the woman I had become. The night after that phone call, I lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles above me. Daniel was beside me, his arm draped over my waist, steady as always. But my mind was racing. Marcus thought he still knew me, the broken woman who drove away in a rusted Civic with nothing but a few trash bags of clothes. He didn't know the Elena I'd become. The next morning, Daniel found me at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee gone cold in front of me. He sat down, studying my face. "You're thinking about going, aren't you?" I didn't answer right away. Outside, the girls were playing in the backyard, their laughter spilling through the open window like sunlight. 3 miracles I was never supposed to have. 3 living truths that Marcus had been wrong about everything. "He thinks he'll humiliate you," Daniel continued softly. "But he has no idea who you are now." I looked up at him. His eyes weren't judging, only steady, full of the quiet faith that had carried me this far. "I don't want revenge," I whispered. I want closure. I want to look him in the eye and show him that he didn't destroy me." Daniel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then we go, I asked, surprised. "You think I'm letting you walk into that ballroom alone? No. We go. All of us." The idea startled me at first. Bringing the girls to his wedding. But then I pictured it, 3 bright little girls in their matching dresses, their tiny hands in mine. The very children Marcus once swore I could never give anyone. The irony was almost poetic. Over the next few days, we planned carefully. Daniel pulled up Marcus's social media. He was as loud online as I remembered photos of expensive cars, designer suits, and captions dripping with ego. One post showed the ballroom of a luxury Dallas hotel, the caption reading, "New beginnings require letting go of old mistakes." Old mistakes. That's what I was to him now. Not a woman who had sacrificed everything but a footnote. A cautionary tale. I felt a flicker of anger, but it didn't consume me like before. Instead, it sharpened into resolve. I wasn't his mistake. I was his mirror, the one who reflected back all the things he couldn't face about himself. The week before the wedding, I stood in front of my closet, running my hands over the dresses hanging neatly in a row. Nothing felt right. Too plain, too loud, too much like I was trying to prove something. Then I found it, a deep emerald green dress, elegant but understated, strong without shouting. When I stepped out, Daniel's eyes widened. "That's the one," he said. "You'll walk in, and no one will be able to look away." I smiled faintly. Not even him. We had the girls' outfits picked out, 2 soft yellow dresses that made them look like tiny sunflowers. Bright, radiant, impossible to ignore. And for Daniel, a charcoal gray suit, sharp and timeless. The kind of look that said confidence without needing to say a word. The night before we left, I tucked the girls into bed. Lila looked up at me sleepily. "Mama, where are we going tomorrow?" "To a party," I said softly, brushing her hair back. "Will there be cake?" Luna chimed in. Probably, I smiled. "Good," Leora sighed. "I like cake. If only it were that simple." When they finally drifted off, I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to their steady breaths. My chest tightened. I thought of the woman Marcus had convinced me I was barren, broken, small. Then I looked at the 3 miracles in front of me. Proof that love, when real, had the power to heal what cruelty tried to destroy. I whispered to the darkness, not for them, but for myself. He has no idea who he's about to meet. The morning of the wedding, our limousine pulled up in front of the house. I hesitated for a moment, hand on the door nerves tightening in my stomach. Daniel leaned close, his voice steady in my ear. This isn't about showing off. It's about showing up. There's a difference, and he was right. This wasn't about Marcus anymore. It was about me proving to myself that the past no longer defined me. As the girls climbed in, chattering with excitement, I took a deep breath and followed. The city blurred past the tinted windows as we drove toward the hotel. With every mile, I felt the old Elena fading behind me, replaced by the woman who had rebuilt herself piece by piece. I wasn't going to his wedding as a victim. I was walking in as a testament. And I was ready. The limousine slowed to a stop in front of the towering glass hotel, the kind of place with marble floors and chandeliers big enough to swallow whole living rooms. My palms were slick with sweat, though I tried to steady my breathing. Daniel got out first, then held the door for me. His hand was warm grounding. Our daughters tumbled out behind us, yellow dresses, swishing eyes wide at the fancy cars, and polished guests streaming inside. The doorman blinked when he saw us step from the limo, not because we looked out of place, but because we looked exactly right. A polished family, confident and complete. Inside, signs pointed toward the grand ballroom, where the Donovan Vasquez wedding was already underway. Soft jazz floated down the corridor, mingling with laughter and the clink of champagne glasses. "You ready?" Daniel asked quietly, offering me his arm. I glanced down at the three little hands clutching mine at the emerald green dress that shimmered under the chandeliers and nodded. Ready. The ballroom was breathtaking, crystal candelabras on every table, white roses spilling over tall vases, a string quartet playing in the corner. Guests in evening gowns and tuxedos clustered in groups sipping champagne. At first, no one noticed us, but then heads began to turn. Conversations faltered. I felt eyes sweep over me, curious, calculating. Who was this woman in emerald, walking in with triplets, and a man who looked at her like she hung the moon? And then across the room, I saw him. Marcus Donovan. He was laughing near the bar, glass in hand. Suit cut sharp enough to slice paper. Success clung to him like cologne. But the moment his eyes landed on me, his smile froze. For a beat, he didn't move. Just stared like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't fit. "Elena," he finally breathed, his voice low, uncertain. "Hello, Marcus." My tone was calm, steady. "Thank you for the invitation." He blinked, glancing at Daniel, then down at the girls, their identical faces framed with curls clutching my skirt. For once, Marcus, the man who always had something slick to say, was speechless. Daniel stepped forward, extending his hand. Daniel Brooks, Elena's husband. Marcus's jaw twitched. Husband. The word landed like a punch. He shook Daniel's hand stiffly, then looked back at me. "And these are our daughters," I said evenly. "Lila, Luna, and Leora. Triplets." The color drained from his face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then muttered, "Triplets." "Yes," I said softly. "Triplets." Before he could gather himself, a voice chimed from behind him. "Beautiful children." I turned to see Vanessa approaching, radiant in her lace gown, veil trailing behind her. She smiled politely, clearly unaware of who I was. "Thank you," I said, returning the smile. "And congratulations. You look lovely." Her smile faltered when I introduced myself. Elena Carter Brooks. Recognition flickered in her eyes, then calculation. Her gaze darted to Marcus, then back to me. She recovered quickly, pasting on a hostess's grin. "Of course." "Welcome." She excused herself, but I caught the tightness in her jaw. She hadn't expected me either. The ceremony flowed on, elegant and polished. Guests laughed, clapped, toasted. But beneath the music and chatter, I felt the tension buzzing like a live wire. And then came the speeches. Marcus rose, first glass in hand, smiling broadly at the room. "I used to think I knew what love was," he began. "But real love isn't about just putting up with someone. Real love is about partnership, about someone who makes you better. His gaze landed on me for just a flicker, sharp as a blade, before returning to Vanessa. Veronica showed me what true love looks like. She gave me a family. She made me whole. Polite applause rippled. I sat still, my hand tightening around Daniel's. Then Vanessa stood, her voice sweet but firm. Marcus and I have overcome so much together. Some people take the long road to find the right partner. Marcus was married before, but sometimes the wrong woman can't give you what you need. Her eyes flicked toward me. 6 years and no children. But with the right woman, Marcus now has a beautiful family, a legacy. The room shifted uncomfortably. Guests glanced at each other, realizing exactly who I was. Heat rose in my chest, but instead of shrinking, I stood. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying clear across the ballroom. "I'd like to say a few words." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The DJ hesitated, then held out the microphone. I walked to the front, the weight of 100 eyes on me. My daughters clung to Daniel's legs, their little faces peeking curiously at the scene. First, I began steady. "I want to thank Marcus and Vanessa for inviting me. It's not often you get to celebrate someone else's happiness up close." Nervous laughter fluttered through the room. "I've listened tonight to words about partnership, sacrifice, family. And I was reminded of my own marriage to Marcus. My eyes found his. 6 years together. 6 years of believing that love meant giving everything. 6 years of sacrifices, including the $15,000 I saved, working double shifts money. Marcus promised was an investment in our future." I pulled out my phone, tapped play. Marcus's voice filled the ballroom. "You're investing in us, in our future. I promise, baby, we'll have everything we dreamed of." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus's face blanched. "But that future never came," I continued. "Instead, I was left with nothing while he built an empire." The room buzzed. Guests shifted, whispering. "But let's address the real elephant in the room," I said. "For years I was told I couldn't give Marcus children, that I was broken, that I was less than." I held up a folder of papers. "These are medical records from fertility specialists. They prove I was perfectly healthy." Marcus, however, refused testing. He insisted he didn't need it because he had proof. I turned toward the children's table where Caleb sat stiffly. My voice softened. "But DNA doesn't lie. Caleb was never his biological son." Gasps erupted. Vanessa's champagne glass slipped, shattering on the floor. Marcus's face turned chalk white. And as for Kennedy, I added, "Marcus could never have fathered her either. Tests confirmed he's infertile. Always was. Always will be." The ballroom fell into stunned silence. I drew a breath, steady. No, I wasn't broken. I wasn't barren. I simply married a man who built his lies on my back. Then I gestured to Daniel, who now held our 3 daughters in his arms, their golden dresses glowing under the chandeliers. And with a real partner with love that's true, I gave life to 3 beautiful girls. Triplets. Living proof that there was never anything wrong with me. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, applause broke out, hesitant at first, then swelling as more people joined. I turned back to Marcus. His shoulders had slumped, his face crumpled. The confident man in the tailored suit was gone, replaced by someone small, exposed. "Thank you, Marcus," I said quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear, "for teaching me what I never wanted in a husband. Because of you, I found the life I truly deserved." I handed the mic back to the DJ and walked toward my family. Daniel slipped his arm around me. Our daughters beamed, too young to understand but sensing victory in the air. As we left, voices buzzed behind us. Guests whispering, phones recording the story, already spreading like wildfire. But I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had already won. The night of the wedding ended in chaos. Guests whispered in corners, phones lit up with recording screens, and somewhere behind us, I heard raised voices, Marcus trying to salvage the wreckage, Vanessa demanding answers through tears. But we didn't stay to watch. Daniel hailed the limo, scooped up the girls, and slid in beside me. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The girls were chattering about the pretty party and asking when they could have cake. Daniel finally broke the silence, pulling me into his chest. That he whispered was the most powerful thing I've ever seen. I exhaled, adrenaline finally draining from my body. My hands trembled as I brushed back a loose curl. I can't believe I did that. You didn't just do it, he said, kissing the top of my head. You owned the truth, and you showed them who you really are. The fallout came fast. By the next morning, Dallas gossip blogs were buzzing. Wedding drama, local businessman exposed by ex-wife at lavish ceremony. There were blurry cell phone videos, audio clips of my speech, even screenshots of Marcus's old social media posts. By Monday, it had made the local news. Anchors recapped the drama like it was a soap opera, complete with commentary from anonymous sources close to the family. Prestige cleaners. Marcus's chain of dry cleaning stores took the hardest hit. Corporate clients pulled their accounts, citing reputation concerns. Reviews tanked. Franchise opportunities evaporated. Marcus had built his empire on polish and perception, and overnight both were gone. As for Vanessa, she filed for divorce within a month. Rumors swirled that she'd moved back in with her parents, taking Kennedy with her. The fairy tale marriage had lasted barely long enough for the ink on the license to dry. And Marcus. He disappeared from the spotlight. Friends whispered that he'd sold his house to cover mounting debts. Word spread that he was back working in someone else's dry cleaning shop, folding shirts in the back like he had years ago. I didn't gloat. Oddly, I felt nothing. No triumph, no revenge. Just release. Weeks later, I received a call that surprised me. Elena Carter Brooks, the voice said crisply. This is Jennifer Martinez, attorney for Vanessa Donovan. I'd like to discuss your financial investment in Prestige Cleaners. I froze, soup ladle still in hand. My investment. Yes, she continued. Based on your public statements and that recording, it seems you were never compensated for the $15,000 you contributed to launch the business. Legally, you may still hold claim to part of the assets. My first instinct was to refuse. I had moved on. I didn't want his money. But Jennifer pressed. We're not talking about pennies. Depending on valuation, you could be owed several $100,000. That night, I sat at our dining table with Daniel, the girls asleep upstairs. It feels like kicking a man when he's already down, I admitted. Daniel shook his head. Elena, that man invited you to his wedding just to humiliate you. He let his new wife call you barren in front of 100 people. He took your money, your trust, and threw it in your face. This isn't revenge, this is justice. Justice. The word settled deep in my bones. 8 months of legal proceedings followed, depositions, hearings, paperwork. Marcus's lawyers argued the money had been a gift. But then came the recording, his voice promising it was our investment, our future. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. Compensation just over $400,000. I remember holding the check in my hands, Daniel watching silently beside me. The weight of it wasn't money, it was closure. A period at the end of a long, painful sentence. We made a decision together. I donated every cent. 3 organizations in Dallas that helped women rebuilding after divorce, offering childcare, job training, and legal aid. I wanted those women to have the lifeline I once needed, but didn't have. The donations made local headlines. Soon after, Harvest Kitchen was invited to partner on community programs. Food for shelters, workshops for single mothers, mentoring for aspiring entrepreneurs. What Marcus had taken from me became the seed for dozens of new beginnings. Life moved quickly after that. Harvest Kitchen grew beyond anything I had imagined. We expanded into grocery chains nationwide. Daniel's videos, once just quiet documentaries, turned into full campaigns that went viral. And me, I found myself on stages speaking to rooms full of women about resilience, reinvention, and refusing to let someone else define your worth. I still remember one night in Denver standing in front of 500 women. I told them the man who thought he broke me invited me to his wedding. But I walked in whole and I walked out free. The applause was thunderous. But what mattered more were the women who came up afterward, tears in their eyes, whispering, "That's my story too. You gave me hope." At home, life was quieter, sweeter. The girls grew fast, curly-haired whirlwinds who filled our house with chaos and joy. Mama finally rested easy, her bills paid, her kitchen once again full of life. One night as I tucked the girls in, Leora looked at me with her serious eyes. "Mama, are we strong?" she asked. I kissed her forehead. "Stronger than you know." And as I closed their door, I realized that strength wasn't in what I had gained back. It was in what I had built, what I had chosen, who I had become. Marcus had once called me barren. Now I carried proof of life everywhere I went, in my daughter's laughter, in a thriving business, in a community nourished by my hands. I didn't just survive him. I transformed because of him. 5 years after that unforgettable wedding, I found myself standing on a stage in Denver. 1,000 eyes watched me, rows of women leaning forward in their seats. Some clutched notebooks, some held tissues, all of them waiting. I took a breath, smoothed the front of my navy dress, and began. The man who thought he broke me once invited me to his wedding. He wanted me to walk in defeated, proof of his victory. But I walked in with my husband, my daughters, and my dignity. And I walked out free. The room erupted in applause. I smiled, but what touched me most wasn't the clapping. It was the women afterward who came up with tears streaking their cheeks. "That's my story too," one whispered, clutching my hands. But I never thought I'd hear someone say it out loud. That's when I realized my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough. At home in Dallas, life was quieter, but no less full. Harvest Kitchen was thriving, Mama's health was stable, and our daughters, Lila, Luna, and Leora, were 6 now. Bright, mischievous, and endlessly curious. One Saturday morning, Daniel set up his camera in the backyard, filming them twirling in the sunlight, their yellow dresses catching the breeze like tiny sunflowers. I stood at the kitchen window watching. Once I thought Marcus's words defined me, barren, broken, disposable. But looking at my girls, I saw the truth. Life had written a brighter script than I ever could have imagined. Marcus. I never saw him again. Word spread that he'd lost most of his business, that Vanessa had taken her share and walked. Last I heard, he was folding shirts in the back of someone else's store. I don't hate him. I don't even pity him. He simply became what he always was, a chapter in a book I had already finished. Because the real story wasn't about his downfall. It was about my rise. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the girls begged for a story before bed. Instead of a fairy tale, I told them mine, softened for little ears, but true all the same. Once Mama thought she wasn't strong, but she was. Once Mama thought she couldn't have children, but she did. And once Mama thought she was small, but she grew into someone no one could ever break again. Leora snuggled closer, her voice sleepy. "So we're your happy ending." I kissed her forehead. "No, baby. You're my happy beginning." Sometimes I think back to that emerald dress shimmering under the hotel chandeliers, 3 little girls by my side. That image has stayed with me, not as a symbol of revenge, but of reclamation. Marcus thought inviting me was his victory. But in truth, it was my freedom. Because the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living so fully, so authentically, that the person who tried to diminish you becomes irrelevant. My name is Elena Carter Brooks. I am a wife, a mother, a businesswoman. More than that, I am proof that dignity can't be stolen, only surrendered. And I will never surrender mine again. Final message. Your worth is not defined by someone who couldn't see it. Your strength isn't proven by how little you break, but by how powerfully you rise. And sometimes the very people who tried to silence you become the reason you find your voice. So if you're listening, if you've ever been told you're not enough, remember this, you already are. At its heart, this story reminds us that dignity cannot be stolen. It can only be surrendered. Elena's journey shows that sometimes the greatest betrayal becomes the very spark that ignites our transformation. Too often, we let the voices of others tell us who we are, not enough, too weak, broken. But as the saying goes, it's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. True worth is not measured by wealth, appearances, or even the approval of others, but by how we rise when life tries to keep us down. Her story is a reminder that injustice may wound us, but it doesn't define us. By refusing to stay silent, by facing cruelty with courage, and by choosing to rebuild with love and integrity, we not only reclaim our lives, but also inspire others to do the same. Justice may come late, but it is never too late to choose self-respect and begin again. What about you? Have you ever faced a moment when you had to prove your worth not to others, but to yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and join us for more powerful stories that stir the heart. Wishing you peace, strength, and quiet hope as you walk your own journey.